Our journey starts here on Relationship Highway, and our greatest asset in life is the quality of our relationships. Relationships change. That is a fact of life. And when relationships change, it's loss. And we have lots of losses in life, and most of the time we just shake off our losses and continue on. But sometimes our losses are of such a big magnitude that we experience grief. And we need to experience that grief. We need to honor it. We need to give it space. We need to nurture it. We need to give it our attention. Because if we don't, that grief can get stuck and frozen and turn into trauma. So this whole building resilience is about us developing the skills so we don't develop trauma in our lives. At some point, relationships will change. It will either change here at Catastrophe Bridge or here at the voluntary off-ramp. And if you look at the voluntary off-ramp, this means you've got some agency in the change. You've got some choice. You make the decision. It's like leaving friendships that you think are toxic to you. And you're like, I don't want this. I'm walking away from it. And when you do that, you don't have a whole lot of intense emotions around it. You'll have feelings, but those feelings won't involve grief. However, some losses that happen to us happen catastrophically. They're tragedies that happen to us, and they come without us knowing that they're coming. And in that situation, we can fall off Catastrophe Bridge into the swamp or be swamped by our feelings, those feelings of grief, those feelings of loss. If we fall from Catastrophe Bridge, and if something great has happened to us, we can land in this swamp of feelings. And this swamp of feelings can be as deep as an ocean. We can go deep down into that swamp of feelings and really feel lost. We can end up right at the bottom of that swamp of feelings. Sometimes our feelings are so overwhelming, so intense, that we jump out of that swamp of feelings as fast as we can, and we go into the avoidance marshes. And the avoidance marshes is where we just are not processing those feelings. We shove them deep down and we just continue on with life. But there's a risk to doing that. sometimes we can get stuck in anger or the guilt mud flats. And this is where we blame life, we blame other people, we blame circumstances, we're angry at what has happened to us. This is a natural reaction, but if we stay there too long, we sink up to our waist in mud. And try walking in mud, it's very, very difficult. So actually getting and understanding that this is a place where we can get stuck on the map of resilience is important. Coming out of the swamp of feelings is a difficult task. We often will have good days and then we'll fall back and be swamped by our feelings again and overwhelmed. We've really got to drag ourselves out of that swamp of feelings, which happens over time. Then we find ourselves in the forest of hope. And the forest of hope is where we can regain our energy. We can have some deep rest. We can connect with other people and we can just ponder life for a time without being swamped by our feelings. We're just regathering our energy. And after that time, we will begin to want to move again forward in our lives. And the rocky paths is a metaphor for discovering something new in our lives. It might be a new career, or it might be a new relationship, or it might be that we learn a new skill, a new language, or learning to play the guitar. We're looking for something that we can be passionate about and that we can re-engage ourselves in. Eventually we'll find ourselves at the Seymour Mountains, and the Seymour Mountains is where we get a full view of our future again. We can begin to design our lives. We can develop a crystal clear vision of what it is that we want to create, and we can hold a certainty that we'll create that vision. And then we can work relentlessly through trial and error to create that vision that we want for our lives. This is the only place that we can do that from the Seymour Mountains. Some people form new relationships. We all form new relationships, but often we form those relationships from a far more experienced and wiser place. And we've reassessed our values and we know now what is important for us in terms of the relationships that we want in our lives. Some people can get stuck in the desolate desert and they lose all relationships. You might bump into some of these people in the capital cities, on the streets, sleeping rough, lost relationships with people, chronic alcoholism, chronic substance abuse, and that's why it's called the desolate desert. So that's a brief introduction to the map of resilience. In the course that I'm going to take you through, we are going to dive deeply into each one of those areas on the map, and we are going to seek to understand what is required to move through that area and the skills that we need to develop and the strategies that we can use. Sometimes we move through the map very quickly, just in a matter of minutes, and sometimes we get stuck and it takes a lot longer to move through that map. This is the beginning. The introduction to the modules we will explore in greater depth as you join with us. This is the work that is involved in understanding the psychological landscape, recovering from our losses, preventing post-traumatic stress, and building resilience. This is the journey of our lives, the journey towards post-traumatic growth.